Hello guys, at this time we would like to explain about general provision and tax assessment. At this chapter, we divided by spread of topics. The first topic is the importance of tax. Second topic is general tax provision. Third is subject tax. Fourth is object tax. Five, main component in a tax. 6. Tax compliance and informants. And last is conclusion. So, without further ado, let's get into the explanation.
Okay, next I would like to explain about the importance of tax. Tax are very important because when we pay tax, the government gets money from the people who pay tax. Apart from that, tax also have important function that make tax important. Namely, first is budget functions or budgeter. Namely, taxes are used as a tool to optimally inject funds into the state treasury based on the applicable tax law, so that tax functions to finance all expenditures related to the government process. The second is regulating functions or regularian. Namely, taxes are used by the government as a tool to achieve certain goals and complement the budget function. The government can regulate economic growth through tax policies. And the third is stability function. Namely, tax makes the government have funds to carry out policies related the price stability so that inflation can be controlled. This can be done by regulating the circulation of money in the community, tax collections, and the effective and efficient use of taxes. And the last is revenue levy function, which is a tax used to finance all public interests, including to financial development, so that it can open up job opportunities, so that it can increase people's income.
And next is about the general tax provision. The first one is tax subject. A tax subject is any entity, individual, or organization that has a tax obligation. And next is taxpayer. A taxpayer is any person or entity that is subject to tax by law. Basically, taxpayers are responsible for filing tax return and paying any tax due. And next is taxpayer identification number or NPWP. The NPWP or nomor pokok wajib pajak is an identification number given to taxpayer in Indonesia. It is also used to track tax obligation and payments. And next is annual tax notice letter or SPT. SPT or surat pemberitahuan tahunan is an annual tax return form that taxpayer in Indonesia must submit to report their income, expenses, and calculate their tax liability. And next is tax period. Tax period is the time frame for which a tax return must be filed and the tax calculated. It can vary depending on the type of tax.
And the next is tax year. A tax year is a period of one calendar year unless the taxpayer use a fiscal year different from the calendar year. Typically, the tax year runs from 1 January to 31 December. And the next is income tax or PPH. Income tax is a tax levied on income received or earned by a taxpayer within one tax year. It covers various types of income such as salaries, business profits, interest, dividend, royalties, and others. Next is value added tax or VIT. VIT is a tax imposed on the consumption of goods and service within the country or custom areas. It's an indirect tax collected through a tax credit mechanism where the seller collects VIT from the buyer and remits it to the state. Next is sales tax on luxury goods or PPNBM. PPNBM is a tax imposed on the sale of goods classified as luxury items. This tax is applied only once at the time of delivery of luxury goods by the producer or at the time of import. And the last point is land and building tax or PBB. PBB is a tax levied on the ownership, control, and or utilization of land and or buildings. It's an objective tax, meaning the amount of tax depends on the object or land and building owned, not on the subjective condition of the taxpayer.
Next is subject tax. In Indonesia, there are two subject taxes, including domestic tax subject and foreign tax subject. For domestic tax subject, the provision of domestic tax subject in Indonesia consists of: first, individual who reside in Indonesia. This includes individual who live in Indonesia. Second, individual who are in Indonesia for more than 183 days within a period of 12 months, or individual who in a tax year are in Indonesia and have the intention to reside in Indonesia. It means especially people who stay in Indonesia for more than 183 days within a 12-month period, or those who intend to reside in Indonesia during a tax year. And the third, entities established or domiciled in Indonesia. It means companies or organizations established or based in Indonesia. And the last, inheritance that has not been divided as a single unit, replacing the rightful owners. It means estates that haven't been distributed to her and are treated as a single tax entity. Next is foreign tax subject. The provision of foreign tax subject in Indonesia consists of: first, permanent establishment or PE. It means a fixed place of business through which a foreign entity conducts its activities in Indonesia. Second, income from Indonesia. It means foreign individuals or entities earning income from Indonesian sources. And the third, residing in Indonesia. It means foreigners who reside in Indonesia but don't meet the criteria for domestic tax subject. And the fourth, intention to reside in Indonesia. It means foreigners who show intention to stay in Indonesia long term. And the last, continuous or intermittent stay in Indonesia. It means people who repeatedly visit Indonesia for shorter periods. So, the main difference is that domestic tax subjects are generally taxed on their worldwide income, while foreign tax subjects are typically only taxed on income derived from Indonesia.
Next, after explaining about the tax subject, I will explain about the tax object. The first, there is dividend. First of all, the definition of dividend is that a portion of the company's profits or income is distributed to shareholders at an amount determined by the board of directors. Dividend must be authorized at a shareholders meeting. Well, the dividend itself is classified as income so that it will be subject to income tax or PPh. And the second is interest, including premium, discount, and return, in connection with debt repayment guarantees. So the premium interest applies when the bond is sold above its face value. Premium is the amount of income for the party issuing the bond. In contrast, discount interest is calculated if the bonds are purchased below their nominal value. The definition of interest above is interest received or earned from deposit and savings placed abroad through bank established or domiciled in Indonesia or branches of foreign banks in Indonesia. The third is royalties, leases, and other income in connection with use of assets. And the fourth is remuneration in connection with service, job, and activities. And the fifth is prize and awards. So, in accordance with Article 4, Paragraph 1, letter B of Law Number 7 of 1983 concerning income tax as last amended, by Law Number 10 of 1994, prize from lotteries or work or activities, and award are income that is the object of income. And the next point is about pension and other regulation payment. So the calculation of pension funds has been regulated according to the Minister of Finance Regulation or PMK number 16H of 2023, which came into effect on January 1, 2024. The next point is, or the last point is about swap premiums and other hedging transaction and or profit due to debt relief. So profit due to debt relief is a tax object. With the government regulation, the profit due to debt relief obtained by small business debtors is exempted as a tax object up to the maximum amount of the small business credit ceiling provided in accordance with the type of credits. And the tax object of swap premiums and hedging transaction is income derived from swap transaction, including swap premiums and swap discount. A swap premium is the difference in the price of the currency that become more expensive to buy in a forward or future transaction in foreign exchange, while the discount swap is the opposite of swap premium, which is the price of currency that become cheaper to buy in a forward transaction. Income from swap transaction, including swap premium, is categorized as business income and is taxed at 20% under Article 26 of Law Number 36 of 2008 on income tax or PPH. And this tax withheld by the party paying the income, such as the bank that is the counterparty in the swap transaction.
And also we will explain main component in tax assessment. In tax assessment, there are two main components. The first one is tax object value, or in Bahasa, you can call it NGOP or nilai jual objek pajak. In tax assessment, NGOP serve as the basis for calculating land and building tax. NGOP is determined through approaches such as comparative market value, cost, and income capitalization method. The second one is lease building cost. Or in Bahasa, you can call it Daftar Biaya Komponen Bangunan or DBKB. DBKB is used to assess building based on the cost average. It includes major component costs, material component costs, and facility component costs for each type of building use.
Next is tax compliance and enforcement. In general, tax compliance can be divided into two types as follows. First, administrative or formal compliance. Compliance in this case refers to the extent taxpayers comply with procedural requirements and tax administration. Second is technical or substantive compliance. Technical compliance refers to the correct and accurate calculation of the tax burden. And then we have tax enforcement. Tax enforcement is an activity that ensures taxpayers are in compliance with their rights and obligations under applicable laws and regulations. So this means if taxpayers have met formal rules, they have also met more important material rules. The difference between formal compliance and material compliance can be seen in the way that two types of compliance are defined. Formal compliance is about reporting, while material compliance is about more than that, including things like calculation, payments, and reporting. Then there are a few things that affect how well people in Indonesia comply with tax regulation. First is tax knowledge, second is socialization related to taxation, third is improvement of tax administration system service in Indonesia, fourth is tax penalties, and fifth is taxpayers' awareness of their tax obligation. With these videos, we can know the definition of tax based on law of the Republic of Indonesia, and the second, what is the importance of understanding the provision and procedure for tax reporting, especially for a taxpayer, which can reduce error in tax deduction and reporting. Second, for transparency of tax reporting, and last, add insight into taxation, especially in Indonesia.